I was already tense as I stepped into my parents' backyard that afternoon. Every time I made myself attend these gatherings, I repeated the same rules in my head. Stay neutral, stay calm, keep your distance, and never let your guard down. I was 29, a grown woman, a single mother raising an 8-year-old daughter named Haley. My only purpose was to shield her from the pain I had endured. My parents always acted as if I was exaggerating, as if I was making up stories about trauma when every family has arguments. But my parents never treated my sister, Rachel, the way they treated me. They targeted me, punished me, and constantly put me down. Rachel was the favorite, the one treated like a princess from the moment she was born. We were at the backyard barbecue that day because my mother had pressured me into coming. She said people were starting to notice how distant I had become and that I shouldn't embarrass the family over silly childhood issues. Childhood issues, that's how they described years of constant humiliation. Haley stood beside me wearing her little pink hoodie and jeans, fresh from dance class, still in her outfit and full of excitement. She was looking forward to burgers and playing with her cousins. Rachel came out wearing an expensive outfit, looking like she belonged on television. She looked Haley up and down as if inspecting something worthless on sale. "Wow," Rachel said with a smirk. "You still don't know how to dress her like a girl who actually matters." Haley looked down. My jaw tightened. "Not today," I told myself silently. No arguments, no outbursts, no traps. Rachel moved closer and whispered, "Do you really believe that child will ever amount to anything special? You're just raising a lesser version of yourself." I stayed quiet. My mother laughed along with her, as though it was the cleverest remark ever made. "That's what happens when you don't choose the right men," Mom added. "Trash produces trash." Haley reached for my hand. I held it firmly. My father walked up behind me and said, "You look miserable, Danny. Maybe if you had tried to be more feminine when you were younger, you wouldn't have ended up a single mother." This was their favorite game. Emotional cruelty. I told Haley, "Go sit by the edge and watch the water. I'll get you a plate." I turned away for just 5 seconds. When I turned back, Rachel was standing behind Haley and pushed her straight into the deep end of the pool. Fully dressed, jeans, hoodie, socks, and all. My scream tore out of me like something wild. I rushed toward the pool without thinking. Haley was sinking. Her dark hair floated around her underwater like ink. She wasn't surfacing quickly. She was only 8 and terrified. I tried to jump in, but my father grabbed me from behind by the neck and held me back. "Stop!" he shouted in my ear. "She needs to learn. If she can't handle water, she doesn't deserve to live." I scratched at his arm with all my strength. My body trembled with raw fear. I kept screaming Haley's name until my throat felt torn. Rachel stood there laughing. My mother stood right beside her, holding her drink, not moving an inch. My daughter was underwater. My father's arm was choking me. The edges of my vision started to fade from the mix of fury, panic, and terror. I kicked back hard into my father's legs. He lost balance for a moment, and I broke free, throwing myself into the pool. Haley's eyes were wide open, filled with panic, searching desperately for me. She was still conscious, but barely. I wrapped my arm around her chest and kicked hard to bring us both to the surface. When I pulled her out and held her shaking, coughing, struggling to breathe, I looked back at them. My sister wore a proud smirk like she had done something brilliant. My father adjusted his shirt as if nothing had occurred. My mother rolled her eyes and said, "Drama queen, making a big deal over one little swim." I held Haley even tighter. That was the exact moment something inside me changed forever. Something became solid. Something became final. This was no longer a family. This was a danger. Standing there dripping wet, holding my daughter, shivering and coughing, I made a firm decision. Their world would be the one to shatter next, not mine. Because this time, I wasn't just trying to survive them. I was going to cut off their access to us completely, and they wouldn't see it coming. I called 911 before I could second-guess myself. My hands were still trembling, and Haley was coughing softly, with foam at the corner of her mouth and wet hair stuck to her face. The operator remained calm and instructed me to keep her warm and lay her on her side. Paramedics arrived within minutes that felt endless. They were kind, professional, and took control with quiet skill that helped ease the terror in my chest. They removed Haley's soaked clothes, wrapped her in warm blankets, checked her breathing and heartbeat, and told me to ride with them to the emergency room for monitoring. I sat in the ambulance with her head resting on my lap, watching her eyelids flutter as she tried to steady herself. At the hospital, they ran tests and kept watch on her oxygen levels. The nurse who held her hand, while I completed paperwork, had an expression I recognized. The look of someone who had seen family harm disguised as normal life before. The ER doctor asked the precise questions that made it impossible for my parents. Old lies about me to stay hidden. Who was present? Who pushed her? Who stopped you from helping? I answered truthfully in short, practiced sentences. They recorded everything. They noted the bruises and timeline. The hospital's social worker spoke with me afterward and said gently, "I will make the necessary call to ensure your child stays protected." I didn't ask questions. I simply nodded. The police arrived and took official statements. Officers examined the backyard, photographed the pool, and gathered accounts from cousins who finally admitted seeing Rachel push Haley and hearing Mom laugh. When they asked about my father's words, "If she can't survive water, she doesn't deserve life," they wrote them down exactly. On the ride home from the ER with Haley sleeping against my shoulder, an officer gave me a card and said, "We have filed a report and referred the case to Child Protective Services. A worker will reach out within 24 hours." The official language sounded cold, but beneath it was a system that could finally prevent them from walking through our door again. CPS called early the next morning. The caseworker, a steady-eyed woman named Maria, visited our temporary motel room soon after. She explained the available options clearly: an emergency safety plan, supervised visits only, a temporary protection order, and notification to the school so Haley would never be handed over to them. She described the steps without emotion and said they would work with the school and police to make sure everything was followed. Hearing her outline, these protective measures helped something tight inside me finally loosen. Real tools existed now that could enforce safety instead of just hoping for it. I signed the documents. I gave her my phone containing years of saved screenshots, the messages, the insults, the recordings I had never played for them. Maria added them to the evidence. She contacted the school, spoke with the principal, and by lunchtime Haley had a private safety code in her records. Teachers and staff were told not to release her to anyone without my written permission or an approved supervised plan. The school assigned a reliable staff member to help with pickup if needed until the situation was resolved. That official process acted like a shield. Information spread through a different kind of network, quieter and more purposeful than rumors. I met privately with the pastor of the small church my parents liked to show off in and gave him a straightforward account without anger. A child placed in danger, witnesses who saw it, and a father who prevented rescue. He didn't turn it into a public sermon. He quietly contacted a counseling ministry and the community leaders who handled church activities. "We cannot allow children to be at risk in our community," he said. Within days, the volunteer list that once featured my father's name no longer included him. He was removed from youth roles pending review. No viral post, no public drama, just institutions quietly closing the doors he once walked through confidently. I also spoke privately with two trusted people in my parents' social group, sharing calm facts and asking them to support a simple boundary. No unsupervised time with Haley and no events with children present until the investigation finished. To my surprise, a cousin who used to laugh with Mom about my shortcomings replied, "I didn't realize. That should never have happened. I'll keep my kids away from their house." It was a small change, but it mattered. Social protections were quietly forming around us. My lawyer, recommended by a friend and experienced in family safety cases, prepared an emergency protection document and sent it to police and CPS detailing the ongoing pattern and immediate risk. I wasn't looking for public revenge. I wanted legal and administrative boundaries, supervised visits only, school safeguards, and a documented trail that would make any future intimidation traceable. The lawyer also explained custody options if I chose to keep Haley completely away permanently. We didn't rush into court. We built everything carefully with medical records, police reports, and witness statements. In the background, I created practical safety measures, new phone numbers, a different mailing address for school papers. New locks on our apartment door, small official steps that cost nothing in drama, but provided real security. I arranged for my friend Alina to be listed as an emergency contact for Haley's activities. I enrolled Haley in a local swimming class with instructors trained in safety and child protection, choosing times my parents could not easily attend. I taught Haley how to float and how to call for help calmly. It was a lesson in strength rather than fear. I made other quiet choices that stripped away the pride my parents once felt. My father had always boasted about hosting barbecues and pool parties, where his friends arrived with fancy trucks and expensive drinks. I declined the next family invitation not with drama or public posts, but by calling his closest friend, the usual co-host, and explaining the situation plainly. I can't bring Haley given what happened. He privately agreed the next event would be adults only and away from the house. It removed the stage he loved. He felt the missing applause without understanding why. I never called the media. I never turned their shame into online entertainment. I used systems, institutions, and steady community pressure, medical files, police documents, school protections, church policies, and volunteer rules to remove their access and influence step by step. The difference between this approach and public spectacle is crucial. Spectacle gives them fuel to play victim. Structure takes away the tools they used to control and hide behind. At night, I held Haley in our small bed and told her stories about courageous dinosaurs learning to swim, not to bring back bad memories, but to show her she could be stronger than fear. She started sleeping better. She ate more at meals. She reached for her crayons again. Seeing her gentle recovery, while the people who hurt her slowly lost their positions, felt like real justice, not through public shaming, but through the gradual loss of the privileges that let their cruelty seem normal. A week later, I returned to my parents' house for one purpose only: to collect the rest of Haley's things. No emotion, no trembling voice, no pleading. I walked in with Maria from CPS and a police officer beside me, not alone, not vulnerable. My father looked confused, still expecting everything to return to how it was. Mom immediately started complaining. "Oh, please, Danny, you're blowing this out of proportion again. You always loved drama more than breathing." The officer interrupted her firmly. "We are here only to collect the child's belongings. This is not a discussion." Rachel tried to follow us toward Haley's room as if she still controlled everything, but Maria stopped her with a single raised hand. "You are not allowed to participate in this. Please return to the living room." Rachel actually paused for once. I went upstairs and gathered Haley's favorite dolls: her sketchbook, pajamas, hair ties, backpack, everything important. When I came back down, my parents stood there looking like children who finally realized no one was coming to rescue them. I looked my father straight in the eyes for the first time in my life. "Without fear, you will never have contact with my child again, not supervised, not in public, not on holidays, not at school, never." He let out a weak half-laugh, but it faded quickly. Because right then, the officer handed him the freshly approved emergency no-contact order. He was barred from coming within 300 feet of Haley. The same applied to my mother and Rachel. No warning, no chance to argue. It was already official, already in effect, already real. That was my justice, not a big speech, not a dramatic scene. I had taken away the only real weapon they ever held over me: access. I walked out with Haley holding my hand, Maria on one side, and the officer on the other. Their faces looked empty, as if their air had been taken away. Not from guilt, but because for the first time, I held the power and they could not reach it, twist it, or break it. As that front door closed behind us, they finally understood. They hadn't just lost an argument, they had lost us forever.